I think today's video might ruffle some feathers, but that isn't really my intention. I'm making this video for me, or rather me 1 year ago and anyone else who had similar thoughts as 29-year-old Scott. For the majority of my hobby career, I have disliked Kingdom Death models, also known as KDM.
Still pretty clean in there.
Hey, it's my job to address the audience. You're supposed to just paint the model on camera, Scott. I had a pretty conservative upbringing, so I was uncomfortable with overt sexual imagery. I also felt like KDM leveraged the sexuality of women in particular to sell models to sweaty gamer boys, and that felt scummy to me. For what it's worth, KDM also has male pinup models for those looking for that sausage-forward experience. In this video, I'm going to try to dismantle past Scott's train of thought and help others to experience this hobby in full, while also acting a little immature.
God damn, she got thick thighs and big eyes.
Today we're painting Elf from Kingdom Death Models, my first pinup model ever, and unsurprisingly, she's got pointy ears. I'm sorry, elves are just better, even the ones with big boobies. Shout out to Paul, my local friend, who hooked me up with this mini. Now, the topic of pinup models is a divisive one. I put out polls on my Instagram story and YouTube community asking you guys if you'd ever paint a pinup model in your career, and surprisingly, over half of you said yes, but there was still a large portion that wasn't interested at all. Some people were reasonable, like this guy, and others were less reasonable, like this guy. I guess I'm a twat. For what it's worth, my mom is definitely going to see the thumbnail of this video, and she is most certainly going to text me about it. I'm trying to expand minds here, Mom. Also, an important prep step for your pinups is to wet sand the booty for maximum smoothness. Before we liberate people, let's talk shop. I had a few interesting challenges to conquer while preparing this model for paint, like how it was attached to the base. For a situation like this, where the connection point is very small and plastic glue isn't an option, I like to resort to pinning. I'll drill my hole on an angle to allow for greater depth down the length of the foot and bend the pin such that it's perpendicular to the base so she is upright when attached. Also, since I know people are going to ask, these mushrooms are from a yet unreleased Kickstarter campaign, and I don't know much more about it, to be honest. If you're curious about other tools and materials that I'm using in this video, I have them all linked in the description for you to check out. With the prep stage complete, I primed this model with a zenithal undercoat. Pop quiz. Comment below if you know why I'm using a zenithal undercoat, and if you get the entire reason correct, I'll pin your comment. Hint, I'm not using transparent paints to paint this model. Let's start painting. Today I'm going to start with the base. I want this character to be stomping around in a wet forest, so I started with a dark brown to black wet blend on the dirt. I had a conversation recently with an excellent painter by the name of Dave Colwell, and he mentioned painting the less desirable parts of the model first while your creative motivation is high. And when you get to the other parts of the mini that you're excited about, the excitement can fuel that process. I painted my mushrooms to look like cremini because I was hungry at the time, but also because I wanted some visual separation between the model and the base. Elf would be colorful, pastel, and whimsical, and my base is going to be damp, dark, and desaturated. For the white stems, I had created some shading with a mixture of off-white and brown, but also mixed in some ochre. I find that a cream and brown color mixed together feels too pink or salmon-like, and this fixes that problem nicely. I placed this shading immediately below the head of the mushroom, as that's what's likely blocking a lot of light. When I get to the end of a blending process, I always like to clean everything up with some recessed shading and edge highlighting. This stage can often make your blends look better, and if you need help with recessed shading, check out this video about the subject linked in the top right-hand corner of the screen and also below in the description. Lastly, I blasted some Reichland Flesh Shade, a wash from GW, right below the cap to give it some more saturation and a bit more contrast. Next up, the mushroom caps. I dusted off an old color I used to use a lot, Graveyard Earth, which might as well be called Cremini Mushroom Cap Brown as it's pretty much the perfect color. I put up some highlighting and shading not on the top of the mushroom cap, but in an almost halo around the perimeter of the cap. I figured these mushrooms would be a little moist, and as such are glossy in appearance, meaning they produce something called a specular highlight. If you want to know more about specular highlights, check out this video. Let's take a break to mention the fact that I'm painting a specular highlight on a mushroom cap on the base of my model. I think Dave Colwell was right. Anyways, there's a lot of pushing and pulling in the painting process. As I'm increasing the level of highlight, I'm also making the bottom of the caps darker with some diluted black paint applied in a stripy fashion to subtly suggest some gills toward the bottom of the caps, but also to deepen the contrast. When I got to my final highlight color, I started to apply a small circle of highlight, not an entire halo. I placed this circle of highlight based on what I thought was the best viewing angle for the model. I didn't focus too much on the backside of the mushroom heads. Lastly, I speckled on some mysterious orange goo because why not? I have a loving relationship with Tamiya Clear products, and it adds a nice pop of color to an otherwise muddy palette without taking it over. Alright, that's one mushroom over. Let me paint the other 17 over the next 3 hours. I have to remind myself that I did this to myself. These shrooms did not come with this model. This is your own damn fault, Scott. Alright, done. Next up, let's experiment. I have this moss product from a company that graciously sent it to me for free. That is hella toxic, so you can't eat it on camera, Scott. Down. Put it down. Good boy. Anyways, I applied it behind the character to see what it would look like dry, and it looked pretty awesome, so I slapped it all over the rest of the base. I'll have this stuff linked below, but warning, it's pretty expensive, and I'm not entirely sure why, but it does look pretty cool. I felt as though the edges of the moss were a little too harsh, so I glazed over the edge with some dark green ink to soften it. Next, I added a variety of different flora and fauna to the base that felt swamp-like. I like to add very small bits and pieces because it feels like it's more to scale. Even though micro tufts from gamer grass are super tiny, I break them up into 3 or 4 pieces and scatter them throughout the base, for instance. I like to have a nice variety to simulate nature as best as possible. Lastly, I added some clear Uhu glue around the mushrooms to make the environment feel extra icky. That last step finished up the base, and I'm super proud of it. Sure, it took a long time, but it looks so great, and I'm so happy with it. It's important to take some time to be proud of your creative endeavors instead of trudging on to the next step every once in a while. Savor your skills that you worked hard for. Alright, time to finally start painting this model, and we're going to start painting the boots? Jesus Christ, Scott, when are we going to paint something interesting? You know that adage that John and I popularized on our podcast, Trapped Under Plastic, linked below? Well, I'm going to ignore that for now and take some time painting some 70s white pleather go-go boots. What's a more fitting foot attire than that for forest hiking? It's important to remember that artistic rules are never really rules. You can break them at your leisure. There's possibly a few of you out there that are wondering about my creative decisions. I often paint models that can speak to me. Not exactly that, but more it has an obvious story behind the model. While I don't watch or enjoy much anime, this character is obviously a bit of a caricature. KDM miniatures are self-aware and like to lean into being ridiculous, so I wanted to lean into it too. Where's the last place a cute female like this might find herself, especially with an expression like that? In a dank, slimy forest. What's the last pair of boots she'd be wearing for that expedition? You get the idea. This model is silly, and I wanted to emphasize that. That was a long tangent. What are we doing in this video again? Oh yeah, I'm painting boots. Similar to the mushrooms, I'm placing the specular highlight on these pleather boots along the side of the boot instead of on top to give the impression that they're shiny. I'm also using a green tinted shadow because you can shade white with virtually anything, and green makes sense considering the surroundings our character finds herself in. Remember earlier how I mentioned there's a lot of pushing and pulling in art? To increase the contrast toward the end, I added in some darker gray-green shadow to really pump it up. Let's take a break to thank the sponsor of this video, me. If you're a fan of hot elf miniatures like the one we're painting in this video, I got a surprise for you. Today is the last day of my Kickstarter campaign. It ends today at 10 p.m. CST. You can pick up some awesome wood elf miniatures in 75mm, 32mm, or STL formats depending on what you prefer. Along with these miniatures are also masterclass courses that not only teach you how to paint the model to a box art standard, but also include a ton of other great information about the hobby of painting miniatures. Another item you can grab in the Kickstarter campaign is a bespoke metal brush box designed to comfortably fit your nice brushes and other similar tools called the Brush Coffin. Lastly, because today is the last day of the campaign, I'm running an 8-hour-long live stream with giveaways every hour. Here's the schedule in case you want to show up for a specific giveaway. Depending on when you watch this video, I'm likely live right now, so after you're done here, come check out the stream linked below along with the links to my campaign. Alright, let's get back to painting this mini. Okay, we're like 34 minutes into this video and I haven't really done anything interesting, so let's paint some skin. A lot of people, when responding to my poll about pinup models, said they'd be interested to improve at their skin game. This makes sense as pinups have a lot of visible flesh. I began by base coating the whole model with my favorite skin tone, Talarn Flesh, mixed with some red and black to create a shadow. After that, I focused solely on the face. This face was actually a little bit more challenging to paint than I thought it would be due to the cartoonish nature of its anatomy. It was missing a lot of volumes that I'm normally familiar with, but due to my recent research into the black magic of makeup, which you can see in this video, I felt equipped to interpret some of these volumes despite them not existing on the physical model. If you want to see a more thorough step-by-step process of painting the face, check out my Instagram or Facebook linked in the description. I show the process in detail, describing each step. With the hiding of the flesh complete, I started to work on the eyes, and one might think that because they're bigger, they're easier to paint, but let me tell you, they're not. Because they're larger, it's significantly easier to tell when they're shaped funny, not equally sized or angled correctly, etc. I spent a very long time with my white eye color slowly adjusting the eyes to be more symmetrical, and let me just jump in front of the oncoming bus of a comment that I know I'm going to get.
Scott, humans never have symmetrical faces.
And to that I say, you try and paint a model's face to be subtly not symmetrical and have it look like something other than complete trash. It's better to aim for perfect symmetry and let the natural wonkiness come through rather than plan for wonkiness on a model with a face the size of 1/3 of my pinky fingernail. Also, this model has lower and upper eyelashes sculpted onto the model that look like little lumpy sausages that I hopelessly tried to paint. For what it's worth, I'd much rather freehand this than have a company try to cast something this ludicrously small. The process to a third-party observer looked like this over and over again, basically.
God.
Once everything was nicely recessed, shaded, and base coated after 48 attempts and much cursing, I could attempt to paint the irises. I began with very small green dots that I expanded slowly, trying to make each iris similar in size and the direction it was looking. I then added an electric green highlight to the center of the highlight, followed by a white specular highlight. I chose to not paint a pupil in the eye because I think it looks fine without it, and at this point my ass was thoroughly kicked by this face and I was lacking some confidence. Speaking of lacking confidence, let's continue to paint the face. Because Instagram thinks I love beauty content creators now, I found this nice person in my Explore page as inspiration for the makeup for this model. I felt like her energy matched our characters pretty well. With a nice rosy blush, I added some makeup to her upper, outside cheeks and right above the tip of her nose, which gives the nose a very cute upturned effect. That pretty much finishes up the face. Now let's get demonetized and paint some boobs. Instead of discussing the boobs, however, let's challenge some beliefs. I invited 3 female content creators to discuss the subject of pinups. Zambies, Natalia Oracz, and Lyla Mev.
I like pinup models, but I like when they are made in good taste, I would say.
So like with any miniature line, there are some models I like and some models I don't. And I'm not personally the biggest fan of Kingdom Death models, just because that's not the style of miniature that I like to paint.
I very much enjoy painting just pretty beautiful models, and I don't care whether they show skin or they don't show skin.
Nudity was a part of art, so even in the classical paintings, you have a lot of naked people.
It's art, and you're painting that piece of artwork. And the dawn of time, there's been naked bodies all over art, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if someone has a problem with that, that's, to me, more of a personal problem.
The point of pinup models is to be sexually tantalizing. There is no pinup without there also being sexuality involved.
Kingdom Death is a product that knows what it is and knows what the audience is. And if someone finds this aesthetic attractive, then he will follow. And I don't personally see it as something negative.
What I find more uncomfortable about some of the Kingdom Death models is when the models are sculpted with looks of fear. That is the part that really gets me.
I think that everything serves its purpose in life, I would say, and there is nothing is black and white, so there is space for everything. Just like in our everyday lives we have space for a professional behaviors and being neutral and for more sexy behaviors, lol. So it's the same thing in art, right?
The reason why I feel a lot of more women are okay in painting KDM pinups is because these women are sexy and not hiding it, but at the same time, they're owning their bodies and who they are, and they're also just, I will always say, badass women.
But it's when you strip it down until there's nothing but someone's sexuality, and especially if you are consuming it as a viewer and you think that or believe that sexuality is directed and made for you, that's when it starts to become a problem.
We should accept our sexuality, and if someone likes sexual things, then we should accept it and embrace it, right?
I am 100% comfortable with men painting pinup models.
I am comfortable with men painting Kingdom Death models, pinup models, whatever. It's not really my place to tell someone what they should and shouldn't paint. Personally, I would be a little squicked out if someone only painted Kingdom Death pinups.
We should ostracize it and we should like accept all of the different like aspects of our lives. So we as human beings in some aspects are sexy beasts. So when we have like sexy miniatures, why we shouldn't accept them?
I don't think that you should be afraid to paint a model because it's sexy.
Paint whatever you feel comfortable doing, and it is okay if you don't feel comfortable enough to paint sexual models.
Thank you, Zambies, Natalia, and Lyla, for your willingness to share your opinion about a complicated topic in my video. If you want to check out these great painters, you'll find all their information linked in the description along with a full interview for each guest. All right, let's finish up this model. I moved into painting her pink shawl that I highlighted with a off-white color. The yellow in the highlight mixes with the red in the pink to create a lovely peach highlight. A reminder that when you're working with colors like this, in light pink and in the future light turquoise dress, you want to work slowly. Increase in highlight color bit by bit, because if you rush this process, you'll end up with a highlight color that's significantly brighter than what you're working on top of, and it'll be challenging to get opacity, and consequently, a nice smooth blend. I further emphasize the peach color by glazing over the highlight with a very diluted orange ink toward the end of the highlighting process. The process for painting her turquoise dress was actually really quite similar to the shawl. I mixed in that same off-white yellow color with my midtone that I was apparently very excited for. The combination of yellow in the highlight and the blue in the turquoise created a nice, mildly green highlight. Yellow seems to have a lot of great interactions with various hues when it comes to lighting them up. Lastly, I worked on the orange hair. In the past, such as on my chef bust, I began orange hair with a dark brown base coat, but here, I started with something much closer to orange. My idea was that the overall effect would be a lot punchier of an orange effect. I mixed in, you guessed it, more ice yellow from Vallejo to get my highlights, and I might have not gone heavy-handed enough. I was kind of running out of creative energy, but also I started from a much lighter place than last time. If I wanted to achieve the same level of contrast as my last attempt, I would need to go brighter than last time, but I kind of phoned it in a bit. With a couple more layers of highlights, this 30-hour paint job was complete. I learned so much throughout this process, not only from painting the model, but also from speaking with other women in this hobby. Like I said in the beginning, I made this video for someone who is embarrassed of painting a model like this, like I was a short year ago. Ultimately, you should paint what you have fun painting, but I want to share my experience painting this model so you can decide if you should try it out for yourself. Lately, I've really valued new experiences. Experience gives you perspective. It allows you to empathize with people through that shared experience. Because I've tackled this subject, I feel as though my mini painting knowledge has been expanded not only socially, but also technically. I got to tackle fun topics that I never really get to experience. A fun pastel color scheme, white pleather boots, freckles, rosy pink blush, all of these topics that I wouldn't normally experience in a grimmer and darker setting. I'm not saying you can't paint your Space Marine with rosy pink blush and freckles, but this subject matter lends itself to those decisions, so they feel natural and not forced. Models like these challenge you to face uncomfortable thoughts that one might have, like deep feelings of shame about sexuality and overcoming them, or beginning the journey of overcoming. I'm left not feeling embarrassed or ashamed of what I painted, but incredibly proud of the outcome and also the growth that I got to experience. I learned that these models aren't always objectifying or pandering, but can show strong individuals who are proud of their bodies and also incredibly capable. I can now enjoy painting another subject matter in pinups, and I'm excited about that, and I hope that for you too, if you want it. That's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you liked the video. I hope it was helpful. I know that it would have helped me if I saw it earlier on. As a reminder, today is the last day of my Kickstarter campaign, so if you wanted to get in on it, now's your last chance. Subscribe or die, but most importantly, don't forget to paint more metal!